So the past few days we've come across all these videos from South Africa that have been trending online, where we've seen blacks attacking other black people. So in this particular video, I'm not gonna bombard you with all those images and all those videos, probably one or two, but the whole point is to understand why are these things happening. Now, we know that this is not new. All these things have been happening for a very long time, where blacks in South Africa have always targeted other black people. Personally, I believe this is not random violence. I believe this is a political project. Yes, I said it, a political project where somebody is benefiting out of all of this that is happening, and this is what we're going to talk about in this video, and I will explain why. Now, before we get into that, we're just going to talk about how the South Africans basically, and this is a sentiment that is being aired by a lot of people, they seem to have forgotten basically how, their history. It's either they're not up to date with their history, or they've just decided not to engage with what South Africa is about. Because if we really look at it, a lot of people, a lot of these African countries, and a lot of politicians do talk about these things. They were there for South Africa at a time when South Africa actually needed them. So we're talking about freedom fighters, like the likes of the former president of Zambia, Dr. Kenneth Kaunda, that was there for South Africa, actually getting the troops on the ground, training them, sheltering some of the political leaders at the time that were targeted or that were persecuted. We had the likes of Julius Nyerere from Tanzania that did everything possible. Talk about Nigeria, where the citizens are currently being chased down the streets. Nigeria at the time donated millions and millions of dollars that saw South Africa being freed out of this apartheid. So you can see that a lot of African leaders, even Julius Malema himself actually says that a lot of these African leaders were there for them. The African people sheltered them, they provided guns, they provided everything for them to survive in that difficult time. So all these things that are happening, it's just a shame that these things are happening to the very brothers and sisters that helped South Africa be what it is today. So all these targets, as we've seen, they're all happening under this umbrella, which is called the Operation Dudula. So this is not a new term, you've probably heard of it. So Operation Dudula, loosely, the meaning simply means to push away or to force back, okay? But the only problem with this Operation Dudula is that it only seems to be targeting black people, okay? So far, we've not seen any Chinese or Indians or the white people, being targeted as a result or in the name of Operation Dudula. And I think a lot of people have noticed that there's no targeted response either from the government or even from the very people that do not support these particular activities to actually come in an organized effort to fight back and say, well, this is wrong, this must not happen. And, so far this seems to be tolerated all across the spectrum. And I think this is what has led to a lot of people question what is really happening here. So depending on who you talk to, some people will tell you that Operation Dudula is a civil organization, okay, and some people say that it's a structured, politically connected movement that is busy conducting these verification checks, going to public places, whether it's in schools. Recently we saw that this Operation Dudula, or the people affiliated to it, were escorting, foreigners, with their children out of schools and chanting those demeaning terms, as in to tell them, you are not needed here, you need to go back to your country. So you remember what I said about this being a political project and that maybe somebody could be benefiting out of it. Now, let me give you some political context, because it's important to understand some of these things and to know why these things are happening. So when you look at the black unemployment currently in South Africa, you're looking at about something like 40%. So 40% of the black population is unemployed. Now, if you look at the NC has been in power since 1994. That's the time that the apartheid actually officially ended. Well, so they say. But since then, if you really look at it, the ANC has failed miserably or comprehensively to deliver on the economic promise of liberation. So 30 years plus with the ANC, most of these black people do not even have decent jobs. So I'm talking about a job where somebody will have a pay slip, okay? You have a pension, you contribute to a pension, you have decent healthcare, decent housing, you go to work, come back. There's that sort of dignity, okay? And I think this is what is lacking with a lot of these South African people. Now, for the majority of the people that are currently protesting, okay, the concern is that the main protest, okay, push out these people, kick them out, beat them up, or do whatever it is. But how many of those people will the next day actually go actively looking for a job in the hope of getting employed? Okay, so there is that sort of argument that all these things are just being done out of self-hate, this black to black violence, and it's been called out, you know, by notably Mr. Julius Malema. Now, if you really think of it, okay, what do you do when you know you failed your people? You've got no answers for your people. You don't really know what answers to give. So you let all these organizations such as Operation Dudula, okay, to come into play and to operate freely. Because basically what you're simply saying is, well, we've done our best. Okay, we provide the jobs, we've done everything that we can. However, your jobs are being taken by the foreign people. Okay, so it's not up to us, you know, okay. So obviously that creates less pressure from, you know, to the top. And the reason why we say, you know, obviously what we're saying, like the way I'm doing it now, is because we've not seen any organized effort from government, okay? We've not seen any organized effort from authorities, actually, you know, no tear gases, no military vehicles, no police coming in, dispersing all those people. People are just doing as they wish. People are just going on about beating people in the streets and dispersing people, arresting people, you know, on grounds that are very flimsy. Meanwhile, we've got the President of the United States, Mr. Donald Trump, actually welcoming white Afrikaners, refugees, into the United States of America as refugees. And very people that designed apartheid being welcomed as victims, you know. And meanwhile, South Africa, we are busy, you know, the black people fighting other black people and causing all that mayhem and confusion. There's news that on the 4th of May, there may be yet another massive protest, you know, by this Operation Dudula. You know, they are planning a shutdown, you know, the entire or most parts of South Africa, you know, because it's usually a coordinated attack in different cities. So they are planning this shutdown. So my appeal is obviously, and the appeal of so many people, is that this is yet another chance for the government of South Africa to actually get it right, okay? Push back on these people. If you're not really on it, you know, as you claim, you know, push back on it and make those arrests. We want to see some public order, and not as the way we've seen in a recent protest. People were saying it's a peaceful protest, and yet we saw a lot of people get assaulted, whipping people, beating people up. There's a chap from Cameroon was just walking by himself, blended into the crowd. I don't know whether he got stuck there or not, but he was beaten, you know, cut his head open, okay, stole his phone and all of that. So that's not right, you know, because we're all humans at the end of the day, and to see other humans being treated in that manner by somebody that is familiar to you, your own black brother and sister, you know, treating you in such a way is definitely not right. So until then, guys, let's pray for peace and harmony in South Africa. Peace.